Ya'udu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. I bear witness, along with all those who bear witness, that there is nothing worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad, Mustafa al-Amin, is his final messenger. I greet you in the language of peace and the language of paradise, with the greeting of our mothers and forefathers, with the greeting of Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullah ta'ala wa barakatuhu. My name is Bilal Ali Hugh, and you're watching Islamic Action TV under the auspices of Gorilla Minded Productions. Here with one more joint, one more time. What I want to talk about today is the often ignored subject matter in Muslim communities, in our African Caribbean Muslim community. We often talk about the philosophy of Islam. We often discuss the theology of Islam, but we never really get into the political science. And one of the things that is come up recently, speaking to you could say an acquaintance recently who is in the political arena, is the lack of involvement of our people, African Caribbean people in London in particular, in the political, the political activities, the political arena, in terms of voting, in terms of being aware of what are the main issues. Now, in this city, London, there is some big issues that we face in terms of food, clothing, and shelter, in terms of economics, and that falls within the parameters of within the parameters of politics. We know that our elder, the late great Malcolm X, he had a famous speech where he talked about the ballot or the bullet. This is when African people in the diaspora in the United States were fighting for rights under voter registration and to get their full democratic rights within that nation state. Now we are at this time in 2015, we got the benefit of a vote. We're born without a vote, where there was no people in Britain, black people had to die or had to picket or had to sit in to get their vote. We grew up with a vote quite easy, but are we making best use of our votes? And we know that another late great, Malcolm X's, El Hajj Malik Shabaz's predecessor, Dr. Khalid Muhammad, he had a famous speech where he talked about the bullet or the bullet. But he came after Malcolm X with that speech. I say predecessor, but you know what I mean. You know, it's forerunner. But one of the main thing I'm trying to say is that, and the main thing I'm trying to drive home is that we have to become more politically educated and become more politically switched on. For example, do many of you know that Boris Johnson, that admired by some politician, was brought to power with something in the region of 1 million votes? That might be surprising to you, but what's even more surprising is that there's statistics that would suggest that there is more than a million and a half, 1.5 million African Caribbean people, stroke mixed race people in London. So is it possible for us to elect there's over 1 million Muslims in general, regardless of background, in London. So is it possible for us to elect a Muslim mayor or to elect a African Caribbean mayor? Is that possible? Is that something we need to think about? Let's go back and let's check out the political scene in London. A few years ago, maybe like 3-4 years ago, they talked about it being the credit crunch. They started to talk about ideas of economic deprivation, of this downscaling of the economy being restricted. But I have driven around this capital and made my travels around this capital, and I've seen nothing but cranes all over the place and buildings going up. So in the middle of not even a depression, but in the middle of as I said, the credit crunch, in this economic downturn, you see buildings going up. And what does that tell us? That tells us that somebody's making a lot of money, somebody's getting rich, somebody's getting a whole set of kickbacks through the back door. That's what we could infer from that, because it's difficult to believe that all these foreign investors would come into London and buy up all these properties, and there's no policy or no legislation that really goes towards challenging that phenomena, if that was a real problem for the mainstream parties. The second thing that came up in the conversation with this acquaintance was that none of the mainstream parties are putting this type of this issue on the agenda about the housing crisis, because one of the biggest crises in London at this moment is housing, affordable housing for young people. Where are the young people going to live? There is this thing what they call gentrification. I don't know if for you movie buffs out there, you can remember Boys in the Hood, when Furious Styles is out kicking it with his son Troy and his best friend Ricky, and they've gone down to a particular part of the ghetto, and he starts kicking some knowledge about gentrification of how they allow certain black or inner city or ghetto type areas to become deprived. They pull resources out and don't invest. It becomes a haven for crime and drugs and all kind of illicit and immoral behavior. And what happens is certain types of people move out, or the price plummets. And then, after a period of time, outside investors come in. They don't inject cash for those people originally domiciled in that area, but they come in, inject cash, and they change the price and change the economy, so the people who now, the black people, the inner city folk that live in that particular area can no longer afford to live in that area. They start to buy up the shops, or say that, you know, they're not going to renew the people who, the local, say, black business people, they're going to raise their rent, or they won't renew their leases, so then they can bring in a different type of business. And same with the house market, the prices of the house market goes through the roof. So this is one of the things they call gentrification. It's happening throughout. You can see it happening in Brixton, you can see it happening in Peckham, you can see it happening in Hackney, in different parts of London, but in particular in particular types of areas, of black areas where we live. This is a thing that goes on. So I'm saying, or we are saying in Islamic Action, that we need to raise our IQ in terms of the political sciences, in terms of voting, in terms of using that vote, in terms of being able to develop pressure groups, that if we don't necessarily vote, we can say we're going to organize a block vote, or we can put pressure on politicians so they can put the agendas, the issues that we think are relevant, that are dear to our hearts, that are relevant to our lives and to our children's future, the futures of our children. We can put that on the agenda, you know, and we want to become people who use our free will and our agency to create a change in the future, as opposed to becoming victims of conspiracies and social engineering and these different programs by the outside agencies. We're taking charge. This is what Islam teaches us. So we study the need to study the political science or sciences and equate ourselves with current affairs of our own locale. Don't worry about what the Illuminati is doing and Jay-Z and in the hip hop world. Let's in the cities that you reside, those of you watching this publication of Islamic Action, start to study. Start there. Before you get into the geopolitics, think about the politics in your own locale. I thank you all for staying with me for the duration, and I hope that you stay safe. And until next time, and you know it's always a pleasure spending time with you guys, you brothers and sisters. So till next time, stay safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah ta'ala wa barakatuh.